Gorgeous people. It's so nice to see you all. Okay, we're gonna have people coming in and coming out. I've had a lot of requests on Twitter. Hello, everyone. It's so nice to have you here. I'm so looking forward to this discussion. We have the wonderful Helen Lloyd. You all know that Helen is one of my all-time favorite people in the industry. And I just finished telling her I won't embarrass you too much because with too many compliments. But as you all know, I recently posted, I'd had Helen booked anyway, just because you guys keep bugging me and saying, when are we going to have Helen back? And so I've had Helen booked for a while to come back. And recently an article came out and I posted it on Facebook because I had a very visceral reaction to the article, as I said in my post. And part of me hated the woman. And then part of me was like, a lot of this is what I've been trained, in school to do, to not do. And so she has a lot of good points. And I couldn't decide. And I think anytime you have a reaction to something, no matter how old you are, you need to learn more, because that's the key to being good in this profession, in any creative profession, is to ask yourself why and what you need to learn. So long story short, I thought I'm going to book Helen Lloyd and ask her to unpack this, because I found myself thinking things like, do I do that? Do I do that? I know better than to do that. Am I one of those quote unquote Americans she's referring to in the article? And then I thought, no, Helen's on the call. Let's ask Helen's opinion. So I threw her to the wolves, as she so nicely said. And
lions.
the lions.
There am I in the arena being shoved. I'm the Christian being shoved in front of a whole den of lions. But actually, there's only 6 of you, so it's not nearly as scary as I thought it was going to be.
Well, 6 is actually quite good now, because most of the people catch it on the thing. But believe me, we're going to have people joining. We've got a few people that said they're going to be late.
Okay.
So Helen, and you guys, questions, we're not doing quirky questions this time, because this is quite kind of a big subject, and I want you guys to feel that you can ask questions pertinent to it. So throw them in there, type question beforehand so I know to ask Helen.
But if you've got quirky questions at the end, I'll hang on and answer.
Yeah, we can throw a quirky, careful, Barbara's here. She does quirky questions.
Oh, does she?
I think she made Johnny Heller blush at one point.
Oh, well, that takes some doing.
Yeah. So, Helen, what was your initial reaction to the article?
Can I ask a question before I proceed?
Yes.
Are there any Brits here?
Anyone British?
Right. Except me?
No.
Okay.
Just you.
Okay. Right. Well, I think that a British person's reaction to this article is going to be diametrically different from an American's response to this article, partly because she lumps Americans together in one lump. And if it was Brits in one lump, we would all be saying the same thing, but you can't. We're not all the same. We are different. We come from different places. We sound different. But having said that, it's like saying women do so-and-so, men do such and such. I don't think she was using it in a pejorative sense. I think she was purely using it as she is an American. She is allowed to say Americans in a way that if a British person had written the article, they wouldn't have been allowed to say it. So that's the first thing to get out of the way. And actually, I read it through a couple of times, and I went, yeah, I agree with 99% of what you say. 100%, I agree with you, 99%. I think it's a very interesting, very well thought out, very intelligent article about something that is purely subjective. Because nobody can say... I was talking to Daniela before we came on. She and I have a similar timbre to our voice. We both have a slightly breathy read. We're both quite deep. Apart from the fact that we have different accents, if you take that out of the equation, there's a chance that she and I might actually go up for the same books. But anybody who cast me to read a book that Daniela would be good at, or Daniela to read a book that I would be good at, has got their knickers in an absolute twist, because our energy, our nothing to do with our approach, nothing to do with our acting, nothing to do with our talent, nothing to do with our ability to deliver an audiobook, but purely and simply our energy and our personalities, if you like, our attitudes are so absolutely diverse and so different from each other that the kind of book that Daniela's voice works really well for, and that she works a lot on, are not the kind of books that I would ever be cast in, and vice versa. Therefore, I don't think that this article is being as critical as the knee-jerk reactions on social media appear to have thought. I do have one thing that I think it says that's really important and really, really, really valuable to the narrator community, but I'm going to leave that to the end, because nobody in all the comments that I've read on social media has spotted what I spotted in it.
Yeah,
I'm sure you've spotted it, but nobody's commented on it.
I never spotted it at all.
No,
I think it was hard to see it through all the Americans are bad narrators comments.
Absolutely. And it is because we all have a pride in what we do. We all try to do what we do as well as we possibly can. And, you know, I mean, she does use phrase. I'd gone online to see whether there were any decent recordings of Didion's work. Well, there would have been a nicer way of putting that. You know, if there were any recordings that I really liked, would have been a lot more pleasant than to say decent recordings, because it is all subjective. It is all subjective. You know, it's like acting. Daniela, name me your favorite narrator.
Jeff Harding.
Male.
Huh?
Male. Your favorite male
Jeff
narrator.
Harding. Male.
I've never listened to Jeff Harding, so that doesn't help, because I don't know who he is.
But I tend to not.
Your favorite celebrity narrator? Have you got a favorite celebrity?
Penelope Keith.
Right. Okay. Now Penelope Keith and I could probably get cast in the same things. Yeah. She's a bit posher than me, and a lot older, I hasten to add. But you know, we're of a more or less of a generation and more or less of a type. I was thinking, there's one narrator that people rave about. I've never I have come across other people. David Tennant. Has anybody ever listened to David Tennant? You all know who he is, I'm assuming. Do you all know who he is?
Yeah. Okay. Doctor Who.
Right. Well, I cannot abide listening to David Tennant. He drives me up the wall. I find his voice whiny. I find it irritating. I find his interpretations sing-song. I find he's indicating all over the place. I hate him. I absolutely can't bear to listen to him. But he's got multiple awards. I don't like him as an actor. I don't like seeing him either. I can't watch him. I just don't like him. There's something about him that I don't like.
He always looks like he's laughing at the audience. Like he thinks
but I'm not saying he's a bad narrator. What I'm saying is I don't like him.
Yeah.
And so it's a completely different thing. And I think, yes, you can have a bad audiobook. You can have a really bad audiobook. And a bad audiobook is one where the editing is badly done, where there are lip smacks, lots of noise, lots of intrusive breath, when you can hear bird song, when you can hear cars going past, when it's got great, gaps like a barn door in it.
And that is factually, that's beyond someone's opinion.
Audiobook.
Yeah, that is patently bad. Everyone could agree.
Yeah. That is a bad audiobook.
Yes.
But as far as the narrator, and you can say, okay, I don't like that narrator because they've got millions of repeat inflections, they've got a desperate lisp, or they've got a tone of voice that is, it's like fingernails going down a blackboard. And you can go, I don't like that narration because of that. You like that voice, do you?
That was a good character voice.
So, whatever it is, you can say, you can't say it's bad. It's very interesting. I had a conversation with somebody. There's an area of the UK that has a really pretty ugly local dialect. Now, the reason people think it's pretty ugly is because it's not the nicest of places. It's fairly run down, it's fairly impoverished, and the accent to most British people has connotations of violence, of, difficult race relations, of riots, of all sorts of things. But if you play that accent to an American listener who doesn't know the history and the context of that voice, they go, hey, that accent's really cute.
I know.
So
all the British sound really rich to us.
That's right. Well, no, I don't think so. But
no, you do. Honestly, you do. I used to hang out in pubs and like chat up Britishmen. You all sound rich to an American ear.
You mean rich as in wealthy?
Yeah, as in wealthy. You all sound very upper class. I mean, maybe not this audience because they're narrators and they study dialects, but when I was going to pubs and loved the guys with the accents, I didn't know the difference between Birmingham, and I would just assume you all sound very educated and upper crust. To me, you did. I don't know. I mean, maybe it was just me, but it's something about
well, it's like I think something similar happens in America when a Brit listens to an American accent. I mean, we all think y'all talk like that because that's the accent we can all do, because that's the one you hear all the time in the cowboys and Indian movies or whatever it happens to be, because. And I know Americans don't all sound like that, but that's the accent that if somebody says, can you do an American accent? I go, yeah, sure I can. That isn't, it doesn't make
Rebecca's
sense.
saying that British people sound wealthy to Americans. You do.
Well, I can assure you it's completely false. And as is the intelligence. The only reason I wear specs is to make me look intelligent. So anyway, yeah, it is all completely subjective.
Yeah.
Totally subjective. So, what a bad audiobook is an audiobook of poor quality, not of poor narration.
Yeah. I love that. I never thought of it that way.
What's extraordinary is how often you do hear, major publishers putting out audiobooks that have got really bad things. I was talking to a friend who's listening to an audiobook narrated by Colin Firth at the moment and said, I can hear pages turning. It's really off-putting. And I thought, wow, that is really bad. This is a major narrator, major actor doing a major book, and they can hear pages turning.
That was the Joanna Froggatt. I mean, I can't. I mean, she's a good actress, and it's like ruined it for me. And I think, if anything, if the publisher had just please run a little bit of a decrackle, I could have gotten through the book.
See, I think the worst thing that's happening to the industry at the moment is that budgets are so tight.
Yeah.
Everybody's under such pressure, and corners are being cut.
But a celebrity book is going to make a lot of money just by the names. I recorded some RX on it.
I recorded an audiobook for HarperCollins a few years ago for a celebrity author, an A-list celebrity author, who normally narrated her own books, but she couldn't do it, and I sound a tiny, weeny little bit like her. So they cast me to read it. There were 267 errors in the book, including factual errors. The name of the major character changed halfway through the book. There were actual errors, plot errors that were glaringly obvious. There was a whole chapter, a whole area, a whole chunk of the book that hung on the fact that a woman arrived from India into the UK and was thrown by the fact, couldn't cope, was having accidents all over the place because suddenly she was having to drive on the left-hand side of the road. They drive on the left in India and always have done. So, a rookie error. And that was a celebrity author. The first the first book in print had so many comments about this error, that error, the next error. Why does this character suddenly become called Peter? Why did whatever? So I can see somebody saying, what did I do?
Yeah.
Fortunately, I was working with the director in a studio. We corrected all the errors, all of them. We annotated a PDF document. We sent it back to the publisher. My notes, all my notes with all the errors, because I'd spotted them on my pre-read. Nobody else had. Nobody had seen them. So I'd already flagged most of them up. We got through it. We sent them all back to the publisher, and the second edition of the book had my corrections in it, for which, of course, I never got paid.
Do you know, this is really interesting because two things you said just joined together in my head and I think taught me a lesson. The thing you were saying about you and I being different and you bring your energy to the book, right? And then what you just said now about the writing, because I've recently started getting some of those, the men without the shirt on the cover books. And I've made no secret about being a lover of thrillers, right? But I'm also not, I'm going to curate my portfolio very carefully and make sure I only have the best quality. I love like everything and I'll take a lot, and unless it's like really gross. But I didn't realize until the last few days that I was taking them, but kind of with an attitude like, God, they're going to spend 8 hours going on about his shoulders and his t-shirt and whatever. It's like, really? And so I'm doing this book I started a few days ago, and it's got a title that, if I won't say it, obviously, that you guys would gasp if you heard the title. It's got one of those covers that people are gonna, I'm thinking, do I want this in my portfolio? But you know what? And it was kind of disturbing to me how much I love the characters and how well I suit the characters. And what it is my energy fits the characters the writer had in her mind. And just because it's not a genre I'm used to, this book is exceptionally well written. I mean, I've looked up the writer and she's done like a whole bunch of different genres as well, but it's exceptionally well written. So don't judge a book by its cover.
No, absolutely. And that's another point that's valid. I mean, it's slightly off topic, I know, but that's the other thing to make the comment is that, people get very snooty and snotty. And this article is slightly snotty about, literary fiction.
Yeah.
And actually, well, it's not. I've read worse. I've read snottier. She's a bit kind of, this is Joan, whatever her name is, Didion, is writing literary fiction. Yes, I'm sure she is. Virginia Woolf wrote literary fiction. But it doesn't mean that if you're doing a potboiler or a romance or a thriller or a whatever, that you can't have it equally well written. What drives me mad is when you see a book that is posing as literary fiction. In other words, it's arty-farty and full of long words, but is actually really, really badly written. And that really pisses me off, because that's somebody masquerading and pretending that something is what it isn't. And generally speaking, badly written books drive. I did a book once. Sorry, this is a really badly written book. Major publisher, big author, sold millions. It's essentially, all her books are essentially short stories that have been padded out by adjectives. And I'm sure her publisher sends them back and says, right, 7 adjectives to describe a cheese sandwich. And I mean, I just thought, really? And every line is, said so-and-so, tossing her long blonde hair over her beautifully contoured shoulders and her heaving bosom.
That's almost like it's generated by one of those programs, because they're programs.
Absolutely. But it's also, her plots are great. Her plots are absolutely fantastic, very original, good research, because they're all period pieces, good research, but she's writing short stories and they've been stretched into 9-hour-long novels by adding millions of adjectives. So to get back to this article, the thing that she's talking about at the beginning.
But wait, before you say that, because I'm afraid, can I interject something Jim said that's a good point?
Ask questions, go, because I'll just keep talking, No,
but don't forget that train of thought. But the one thing I think is a really good point, and it's a good time for it. he says the more likely people will take, the more well-known the author, the more likely people will take exception to a narrator's possibly conflicting interpretation. That's a really good point, isn't it? Because some writers are beloved and people think of them as the voice in their head.
But everybody, you know, any book, an author always writes a book with a voice in their head.
Yeah. But when it's a famous writer, the audience also has a voice in their head.
But you know, you don't ever try and mimic a famous writer. You know, if you're reading a book, you're reading Winston Churchill's autobiography. You don't read it in Winston. You think yourself into the personality of Winston Churchill, or Edith Evans, or Margaret Rutherford, or Judi Dench, or whoever it happens to be. But you don't try and sound like them, because that's mimicry.
That's a different job.
It's a completely different job altogether. But what this article says about, I mean, having read, now found out who Didion is, who the hell would cast a ditzy comedian to read a book by a heavyweight journalist whose work is described as incandescent and incantatory? Why would you cast Diane Keaton to read that? That's not her style of delivery. It's not her fault that she sounds bad doing it. It's whoever cast it, because it's the wrong person to do that book. So it's another of the corners that are being cut. Fewer and fewer of the audiobook publishers have casting directors. They're now using platforms like Ahab. I'm not saying they do for their celebrity titles, but, you know, when I started at B Audio, there was a casting director who knew all the narrators and all their voices and worked with the authors before the book was cast to say, what tone do you want? What timbre do you want? What kind of flow do you want? What atmosphere do you want to create by this book? And then she would put 3 or 4 people forward who fitted that brief. That isn't happening anymore.
And writers don't always know picking for themselves.
No,
I've had writers try to hire me for 13-year-old YA.
Yeah, no, authors don't know. Authors don't know. But I'm not talking about direct working with authors. I'm talking about working through publishers, which, of course, all of these books are.
Yeah, but a lot of these companies now let the writers just pick from your name and
I don't know
demos.
anybody who does that. I don't know anybody who does that. I've never, ever come across that, ever.
I thought Ahab, don't they on Ahab now, they can hear your voice and they can pick
They can hear your voice, but when it gets to the stage further, they're not casting from that.
And Find a Way Marketplace, they now can do that.
Yeah, but that's not the same thing. Find a Way Marketplace is independent authors working independently with narrators.
Okay, you're right.
It's not a publishing house. Penguin Random House is. Yeah. Now, Penguin Random House will select voices from the Ahab site as a first round and then ask people to audition. They're not casting directly from those samples on there.
Okay. I thought because it's like thing. Sorry.
Well, and I mean, Dreamscape have something similar. You know, they all have a kind of entry point where American publishers do anyway, where narrators can put themselves up front and central. And that is, it's like opening the door into the audition process, but it isn't the audition process. There is always an audition, always an audition. Nobody ever casts directly from those sites, ever.
So I have a question about that article that I'd love your opinion about.
Yeah.
I think the one part that triggered me was, I mean, I understand intellectually and through all the training that no, you're not supposed to add your own interpretation onto the words, that you're supposed to, as a narrator, completely.
Where does she say that? Tell me, give me the quote, because I don't think she says that.
I might have just heard it wrong, because I might have read it wrong. Let me find the place.
Where are you thinking about? I want to hear what that alchemy sounded
where
like.
she said.
But when I went to the recording, the actor kept telling me with his voice what I was supposed to feel. Is that the bit you're talking
Yeah,
about?
and then there was another bit about how she hates it when somebody colors the words the way they
Yeah,
think.
well, so do I.
Yeah.
Drives me
And
mad.
part of me doesn't know. I mean, I'm conscious not to do that. I've never had anyone ever say I do that. But what
Right.
worries me when I hear things like
Yeah.
that is how much of it's what I'd said to you before the call. I'm a person that the way I speak sounds over the top and dramatic anyway. People roll their eyes when I'm having a normal conversation. So how does someone like me sound
No,
subtle and not noticed?
no. What she is saying is, and she's talking, I know she's talking about the Julie Harris, Stuart Little read. And what she says is, part of it is that tone of wide-eyed astonishment you hear with all of its phony inflections. Now, if you listen to the clip, that's what you hear. She's doing, instead of it being, so this is the passage. Every morning before Stuart dressed, Mrs. Little went into his room and weighed him on a small scale, which was really meant for weighing letters. At birth, Stuart could have been sent by first-class mail for 3 cents, but his parents preferred to keep him rather than send him away. And when, at the age of a month, he had gained only 1/3 of an ounce, his mother was so worried she sent for the doctor. The doctor was delighted with Stuart and said that it was very unusual for an American family to have a mouse. Right, now that's just a flat read. What Miss Harris did is every morning before Stuart dressed, I'm exaggerating, Mrs. Little went to his room and weighed him on a small scale, which was really meant for weighing letters.
Yeah, that is sarcasm.
Big laugh, folks. At birth, Stuart could have been sent by first-class mail for 3 cents, but his parents preferred to keep him rather than send him away.
Yeah,
So
I should have
totally
probably listened to the
destroys.
clips.
I mean, that was an exaggeration, but that's the essence of what she does. So the subtlety of the joke of, he could have been sent for 3 cents, but his parents preferred to keep him. She's signaling with a bloody great banner over her head saying, this is a funny line coming up, everybody laugh now. And that is completely destructive to the story.
Oh, yeah, I don't do that.
And she's remember the word phony inflections.
Okay.
Phony inflections. Most of us in normal speech don't do phony. Journalists do, because a journalist will stop and they will go like this. So there's that weird kind of stopping and starting, and then particularly if you're in the UK, you'll know about who's the guy who does the money, the political journalist on ITV. And he has the most bizarre stresses and things. But
I only watch American news because if it's UK news, it stresses me out and scares me. American news, it's happening to all them over there.
And you've just had a high school shooting and it doesn't stress you out.
Yeah, but see, that's not over here. I feel safe over here. But I did just do a book about how to stop school shootings. So that's a bit more. Yeah, but the thing is, so what you're saying, so it goes back to what Johnny Heller says. If you're really feeling in the moment and acting, and then you don't have to worry about that.
It's about, it's about meaningful preparation as well.
Yeah.
And the trouble with celebrity narrators, and one of the reasons that I think that then they don't always make great narrators, is because they have egos. Not only do they have egos, they have a personality. And we've all got egos. Of course, we've all got egos, but they've got an ego that is their USP. You take somebody like Diane Keaton, for example. She has a brand.
Yeah, she becomes a name. Her brand is her. That's her whole life.
Stephen Fry is a brand.
And you can't disappear if you're a brand.
So if they're cast in a book that is not apt for them, is not a good casting for them, their brand still gets in the way because they can't get rid of that brand. Because they I mean, Andy Circus, the guy who did the Hobbit ones, brilliantly, utterly brilliantly. His brand is being able to do Schmiegel now, almost. That's his brand. But he's, you know, all actors, all well-known actors have become well-known these days, not because of what good actors they are, but because of their brand being the flavor of the month. And if you've got a brand that is a flavor of the month and you're cast in an audiobook, you are not going to, however much you might think it's not apt or not relevant to the book, you are going to hang on to your brand for dear life, because that is your USP. And the problem with using any celebrity narrator with a brand like that is no matter what the text is steering them towards or telling them to do, their brand is why they've been hired. That's what the author, the publisher, whoever it happens to be, thinks is going to sell the book. So if they divert from their brand, then they're going to get the publisher saying, but hang on, we hired Diane Keaton. This doesn't sound like Diane Keaton.
I never thought of that. She couldn't
So
have gone on there and done Joan Didion in any other way. She had to go on there as Diane Keaton.
Absolutely. And this is why, this is the strength of the article. If you read on, it says, and this is this
sorry
for me.
For Diane Keaton.
Well, yes, of course you do. She should never have, well, I mean, she's not that bad. But,
yeah, I bet she doesn't care either.
And I'm sure she absolutely doesn't care. But listen, listen to this. Okay. You tend to throw the job at someone in the theatre. Hume Cronin, whoever he is, Jessica Tandy, Julie Harris. They dramatize a book. I think a book, and this is the author speaking, I think a book is better read the way my father used to read books to me, without drama. He read the words, beginning with the seductive phrase, chapter 1, and I supplied my own dramatization. Now, that's probably quite an old-fashioned way of doing it, but if you remember, what we're doing is we're talking in somebody's ear. You know, you're sitting there. I listen to audiobooks when I do with my headphones on. Somebody posted on Facebook the other day, what do you do when you're listening to audiobooks? And I said, listening to audiobooks. I don't do anything else at all. I just listen. I'm not hoovering. I'm not gardening. I'm not doing anything else. I am listening. And that's what I do. Now, that's what we do as narrators. We have somebody sitting next to us and you're going, I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to talk in your ear. I'm going to give you magic in your ear. And you and I together are going to create something believable, something exciting. And I'm going to give you, think of a daisy that a child has drawn. You know, black lines around the outside, a felt tip pen. A clumsy narrator uses a great big, bright, thick felt tip and goes over the lines of the outside edge of the drawing and destroys the drawing. It's beautifully colored, but they haven't obeyed the lines of the text. A subtle, clever narrator uses a very faint coloring pencil and beautifully colors it in within the lines. So the story isn't destroyed in the telling of it, it's enhanced, and it gives enough of the color that, or the atmosphere, or the whatever it happens to be, that the person listening to it can come in and say, you've allowed me to use my own imagination alongside the narrator's imagination to create something magical.
Do you know what you just did as a coach? You just did that exact thing as a coach, and that is what I was saying to you when I first talked to Helen before the call. I said that I was a little afraid of her because the bar is very high, and we all know her in your narration.
I'm scary. I'm really
good. You're really good, and you know your stuff, and also you're honest, and that's scary because you think the person's going to go, "Oh my God, well, honey, give up," right? So
no,
you don't do it. You just gave us the power. You just explained to us
exactly
the best of us.
That's what I think great narration is, and we can't all do it all the time because some of it depends on the quality of the words that you're given. But part of our job is doing that even if you're given crap words.
Yeah.
You know, that's what
Yeah.
our job is. And as I said, with if you have a personality with an ego, and I use ego in the sense of it being a brand, you can't do that because you have to stick within your brand. But the article goes on to say, and this I think is okay. There's no one right way to read a piece of prose any more than there can be one definitive performance of a role in a play. There are plenty of wonderful American audiobook readers out there: Julia Whelan, January Lavoie, Dennis Boutsikaris, whose name I can't say, Bahani Turpin, Kirsten Potter, Crate Redding, Eduardo Ballerino, Gabra Zachman. Those are all members of our tribe. Not one single one of those people is a celebrity narrator.
Yeah, see, I
so
never
what
noticed
this
that.
article is saying is, for God's sake, stop casting celebrities and assuming that they can do great reads, because they bloody can't. There's armfuls of really, really good narrators out there who can do a much, much better job than major celebrities, many celebrities, not major celebrities.
And the ego thing, what you said about the ego, sorry to interrupt, but this is like right here, that what you said about the ego thing, our last guest was Gildart Jackson, and he contacted me. He's like, you know, I've done a lot of audiobooks, never even mentioned that he was an actor, right? And I looked him up to do the promo video. I was like, oh my God, he's been in everything, never mentioned it, never made a big deal, no ego. And I asked him about like the process of success and what he considers success. And he was like, I'm a known quantity because I always deliver on time. I do the work. I do a reasonably good job. I'm a good actor, and I deliver on time. And the producer over here once said to me, when the whole AI thing came up, he said, it's skewed because there are a lot of really good narrators that in, the UK, obviously, because that was where he was, doing an exceptional job. And you're not even going to know them because they're not on social media. They're not marketing. So we're still trying to do our brands. We all have brands. Some of them are out there quietly working away, doing 500, 600
the majority, I mean, I would say in the last 5 years, it's changed dramatically.
Yeah.
And there are now more British narrators using social media and, organizations like APA and events like this. But I mean, I was at an equity meeting in 2019 talking about audiobooks. I mean, I was invited to speak to equity, and there was a room full of 400 people. And of that room, I would say 60% of them have never heard of ACX. They didn't know what it was.
Yeah, I want to be one of those narrators with thousands of books that just casually mentions it and you had no idea. I love that. Anne Flosnick did that. She was like, oh yeah, I've done a few.
Yeah, but that's the jobbing narrator. That's what we all do. That's the jobbing actor. And that's what I am.
Yeah.
And the only reason I'm on social media at all is because I got sucked in, essentially, into the American system when I came to APA in 2017.
But
and
also you're really known as a coach as well. And that's another.
Yeah, but that came much later. Yeah. But I mean, my first career as an actor and then as a television producer taught me that you can't fake it. You have to. You can do a book with minimal preparation.
Yeah.
It's all, particularly if you're an accurate reader. You can do a book with no preparation if you're a really accurate reader. But you're only going to unpeel that first layer of onion. But if you prepare and you dig down and you look for what isn't being said in a scene, you look for the words that are being used and why those words are being used, the lexical field of a book will inform you. If a character starts every page with, I do this, I feel so and so, I do such and such, it tells you something about who that person is if you start thinking about it. it's to do with reading the signals that the text gives you and recognizing them and translating them into something that your voice does.
You have to have because I feel that way. I'm exceptional at cold read. I could easily, when behind, pick up a book and just do it, and nobody would have a clue. But the difference is, if I prep the entire book ahead of time, cold read, I just know the characters, and yes, you're reacting honestly, character. But if you prep the book ahead of time, you know the world. You know the world of the book, and it makes a big difference.
One thing I would advise, which I've discovered very recently, is whenever I narrate a thriller, I never read the last 3 chapters. So that the surprise of whodunit, I can't anticipate that as I start the book, because even if subconsciously you're going, okay, it's Fred Bloggs, I know he's the baddie, and I've got to do everything I can to not give that away for the first 3/4 of the book, because you know it, you'll give it away. But if you don't know it, you will play him or her or whoever the baddie or the protagonist is as exactly the same way as everybody else. And I've got to chapter 3 in the book and I've gone, oh my God, it's him. Bloody hell, I never thought it was. Oh my goodness gracious me, it's him. Now that's the reaction that you want from an audience. But if you know who it is, so I now, if I'm doing a thriller, I never read the last 3 chapters.
I like that.
And it makes it so much more exciting to narrate as well. It really does. It really does. Because you know all the people by then. You know who everybody is. You know what they sound like. You know where they come from. You know their history. But you don't know which, well, unless the book gives it away early on, which some of them do. But generally speaking, you don't know who the baddie is.
I always run into the books where you don't know who the killer is, male or female, but the killer talks, has a narrative in short chapters in the beginning. I always get those books. And then you have to be very careful because you don't want to give away the character when the character is...
oh God, I had one where it was the killer, the murderer was called Sam, right? And the character of Sam at the beginning of the book was a woman journalist. By the end of the book, it was the woman journalist's twin brother who had assumed her identity and murdered her. So Sam had the same name all the way through the book, but changed from a female journalist to a male murderer halfway through it. Now, what do you do with that? I gave them the same accent and gave them a kind of androgynous sort of voice.
Yeah.
Anything you could do. But
and I find that lately, I think maybe just the more books you do, I don't concentrate so much on female, male. I'm thinking more on who they are. My voice goes to both anyway.
Yes, for me, it's to do with who somebody is.
Yeah.
But it's more than that, actually. It's more than that now. It's about attitude, their attitude. What is their... Because people's attitude changes through a book. You may have somebody who's very vulnerable in certain scenes and they can be fragile and dependent at the beginning of a book, but the antagonist will swap the thing round and they end up being a powerful character at the end. Now, it's still the same person with the same voice, but that voice has changed energy and perspective as the book progresses. In good books, your leading character in a good book will always change because there will always be something that makes them change, because that's the essence of a book, is that there's some conflict that makes them change. So just thinking about who somebody is, if you're not going, okay, this is how they sound if they're a man, and this is how they sound if they're a girl, then you're allowing yourself the flexibility to have their attitude and their emotion changed within the context of the book, because you know who that person is and you're not even thinking about what they sound like.
And they're 3-dimensional, because I read a review on this one where I said I was surprised that I really liked the character, and one of the reviews was like, oh my God, this female she's just whining, she's horrible, I hate her, I couldn't. And I don't think they knew her well enough. She's funny.
No.
She's got an ironic sense of humor. There are a lot of women out there
Well,
that beat ourselves up.
irony is very difficult. Irony is very difficult because a lot of people don't get it. They just
Yeah,
don't understand it at all.
yeah,
And they don't, when they're reading it, they take, because we're so used to being fed fact and things in a very unsubtle way, increasingly in an unsubtle way, partly because of social media, I think. We expect everything to be exactly as it comes across. And actually, there are onions again, there are layers.
I think that might be where I go wrong, whereas I think I'm hysterical, but nobody ever laughs when I mean them to. I don't think people understand irony or maybe it's my delivery.
Well, no, humor is really hard in audio.
Yeah,
Humor is really hard with only your voice. It's all to do with timing.
yeah,
That's what gives, it's getting any comedian will tell you that some people just can't tell a joke. I can't tell a joke. I'm absolutely terrible at it.
yeah. I think I'm hysterical, but I'm the only one. Now, I am conscious that you guys, we've got this precious time with Helen, and I promised you guys could ask questions, so definitely start typing them in
Ask
here.
questions. Because,
I promise I won't monopolize this
there's
one.
one other thing I want to say.
Yes.
In the act of reading words aloud, the
Right.
story should become your story, and the author's voice should become your voice rather than the other way around. In other words, you as narrator shouldn't superimpose your voice on the author's. And I think that in this article is gold.
But then how does that marry with we bring our energy to the part? Because our voice is coming through. Do you see what I'm saying? I have a hard time.
Your voice is always going to come through. That's why you're cast rather than anybody else. Okay. You can't hide your voice ever. But you are not, when you narrate, it is not Daniela telling a story.
Right.
It is Daniela telling the author's story.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Well, we all do that.
Yeah, but that's what she's saying.
Oh, see, okay. I wasn't understanding what she was saying. I can't believe I didn't quite get that.
So, it's not Daniela telling her own story.
Yeah.
It's Daniela telling or any one of us.
Well, that's just acting.
And your voice will change depending on the genre of the story, the period in which the story is set, what kind of story it is. You don't read a thriller in the same tone as you read a romance. You don't read a period story set in, I don't know, a Regency romance in the same way that you read a modern romance.
But that's common sense, and most narrators know that, don't they?
Yeah, but they don't do it.
Oh.
I hear it all the time. They don't do it. I hear people, narrators reading period romance, for example, with upspeak, with modern inflections. So instead of saying, so he looked through the window, and they go, so he looked through the window. That's modern. It isn't.
I did listen to a historical novel with vocal fry recently.
Right. Right. And I mean, the famous Essex glottal stop, unless you're playing a character. If you're doing RP, you don't talk about he went up the street. You say he went up the street. If it's a period piece, if it's a modern romance, you can do the glottal stops or you can do the upspeak. But if it was written in 1920, you don't. And people didn't talk in modern idioms. Their pausing, their phrasing was different. If you watch a film like Brief Encounter, for example, nothing is said. This whole love affair is carried on over a piece of grit in somebody's eye. Nobody ever says anything. Nobody ever says, I love you. Nobody ever says, I think you're wonderful. It's all done with looks, and it's buttoned, it's that tight.
Yeah, you have to like buy into a lot of the rules. You can break, like Bridgerton, you can break a few rules but you can't break the important rules. There's a show on Apple right now.
Bridgerton was totally unbelievable. I mean, it was
Yeah.
completely
Oh,
artificial,
but it's so
as was
charming,
Downton.
though.
It wasn't charming at all. It was deeply irritating
I
because
like
it was
Bridgerton.
so wrong. It was so wrong for
But
the
have
period.
you seen, there's one on Apple called Dickens, and I can't, oh my God, I can't watch it. They tried to do what Bridgerton tried to do, but they made it completely modern, and everyone's talking like they're in like a high school, but they're dressed up in those clothes, and what's the point?
That's
I can't
right.
even watch you.
Doesn't work.
But
Doesn't
we have to agree to disagree on Bridgerton. I quite liked Bridgerton.
I watched half of one episode and ended up screaming at it throughout.
I quite liked Bridgerton. We do have a
Somebody's
question.
summing up.
I know.
Thank you, thank you, thank you,
But
Jim.
saying that, I'm the only person on earth that never watched that other one. What's that other one that's famous?
Downton?
Yeah, I've never seen it.
Downton Abbey. Well, Downton is equally false, but at
Is
least
it?
they got the accents right, and at least they got the costumes right, and at least it did have a smattering of period about it.
I loved it.
Why would
I
you?
loved it.
Why would you?
I felt like I loved it. I just loved
She's,
it. I loved the
she's a
spectacle of it. I
real
loved the
person.
rule breaking in it.
Can't do it. You can't do it. It's wrong. It's just morally reprehensible to me. And it's just maybe it's a generational thing. I mean, it's just. But it's
Barbara,
also, what we're all aiming for. I mean, you can't do truth.
right.
You can't do truth. There is no such thing as truth on stage, in an audiobook, or anywhere else. What we're doing is we're giving a version of truth. We are giving something that appears to be true. It isn't true.
It's our interpretation of
if
truth.
you're sitting there going, oh, God, I was really good in that. It really, really, really made me cry. I'm sorry, you're being self-indulgent.
Yeah.
Because it's not about what you feel, it's about what your audience feels.
I agree with you there.
If you are going, oh, somebody else giving me a thumbs up. If you are feeling it, then I'm sorry, you are not fulfilling your role.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I do agree with you
You're
there.
not fulfilling your role.
I've had to stop and walk away. And Johnny Heller says that as well. I quote Johnny quite often, don't I?
Of course, when little Johnny gets run over or the dog gets splatted against a wall or whatever, of course you as an individual are upset.
But nobody wants to hear you're like running out.
I have sobbed over the death of a baby alien, I'll have you know. I have wept for hours after the death of a baby alien. And thought, this is bloody ridiculous. Why are you weeping?
Suddenly my current book is looking really good. A baby alien.
Yes, and he was called Veteran, and he was very sweet, and he was really lovely, but he died, and I got really, really upset. But if I'm going through that, being upset about that, then that was just me being, if I'd done it, if I'd been going like this all the way through it, that's just complete self-indulgence. Complete self-indulgence.
Barbara says, I'm so sorry for your loss. We do have a question. Jim says, as a coach, how often do you listen to a client's entire audiobook? Have you ever?
Never, because I'm never working on entire audiobooks. I'm only working when I coach people, I am giving them texts to work with. So I will listen to them reading those texts, and those texts are very carefully chosen to, I will listen to their samples. I will listen to their, the information. I'd send out a questionnaire that's like, oh God, it's completely thorough about, it's almost obsessive in its thoroughness. And I will talk to them for at least an hour before I start coaching them. So I found out what they want from me, what they think their weaknesses are, what they think their strengths are. I will then give them a text to read. If they manage that one, I will then give them another text to read, which is completely different. And then we'll talk again before I start coaching them, because I haven't got the time to listen to umpty thousand audiobooks. I'm coaching probably 50, well, I limit myself. I won't take more than 50 people in a year. So I'm coaching approximately 50 people.
That's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people, but
Yeah.
they are spread. I mean, and I will only take 50 people at a time. And of those people, I only coach for 2.5 days a week. Now, you know, Daniela, because you've done it, the assignments have grown. You know, you're now getting 3 assignments per module of the course.
I took the course when I first started, remember? And I'm like, you have no idea. I was like, what have I got myself into? I can't do this. Oh my God, I'm never going to do it. Was that's where I got the impression that I was terrified of Helen. But I'm so glad. I can't tell you how many times.
I can't listen to a whole
No,
audiobook.
but it was
And
the
you don't
best
need.
way for me to learn. It was
Yeah,
so
but listen,
uncomfortable, but
nobody listens to a full audiobook in order to cast.
yeah,
Nobody listens to a full audiobook in order to buy.
yeah.
What they listen to is a 3-minute sample. And probably they only listen to the first minute of that 3-minute sample.
And it was the
So
level of detail that you required and the
in
level of
order to
every
find out
breath.
what somebody can do,
Yeah,
you don't need to listen to a whole audiobook. You only need to listen to a sample. If the
yeah.
samples have been chosen well, which is why I listen to their samples and then say, okay, can you read this? Before we go any further, you need to read this. And I send them a text that is very challenging and they read it and then we talk about it. And sometimes I send them another text. So no,
Doing
I
that
don't.
was the best thing I ever did in my audiobook career, and doing it early. It was the best thing I ever did. It made me step up and realized how serious this was, and I had to take it seriously.
Well, I think the thing is that there are an awful lot of, and I know that there are a lot of coaches who are scared to say that isn't working. You
Yeah.
need to work on that. And there are also coaches who will not say, do you know, I think what you're doing is very niche, because there are some people who have an extraordinary skill at doing one particular genre. And you take them out of that genre and they're absolutely at sea. They're lost. Now, that is what I would call a niche narrator. They will get work. And if they stick to what they're good at, they will do good work. The danger comes when we all start thinking we can all do everything.
Yeah.
Because we can't. I am absolute crap at young adult. I cannot do it. I can't get the intonations. I don't sound right. I just sound completely wrong.
I would never cast me for a young adult.
No.
And I've stopped kind of doing religion either, because I think if you really, you need to like find a way into liking what you're doing, or at least, I know we're professionals and we do things we don't love.
Appreciating rather than writing, than liking. I mean, I've come across books that I can appreciate, and I can appreciate the skill of it, and I can appreciate the talent of the author, and I can appreciate the character studies and all the rest of it. It doesn't mean I have to like the book, actually.
Yeah.
Long
it's
as
not always going to be your
it,
thing.
No, exactly.
But, you know, but even the like, oh, he looks amazing in that t-shirt. I can find a way into that. Question, what is your favorite genre to listen to? From Kim.
I do have favorite narrators that I enjoy listening to. I like heavyweight stuff. I like literary fiction. When I do, what I listen to audiobooks for is when it's a book that I haven't got time to read, but I know I want to read, if you see what I mean. So it's when it's enormously long or if incredibly complicated and I just haven't got time to read it. That's when I listen to audiobooks. So it's a much more kind of pragmatic choice. And it's partly driven at the moment. I'm doing an MA. So I've chucked that at myself. So I've got a huge amount of, my reading list for that is enormous.
I mean, you've been doing that. When did you start? How long ago did you start?
I started in January. So I'm now just about to get into the second term.
How is it?
It's amazing. I'm loving every minute of it. It's fantastic. I never thought it would be so much work. It is absolutely. I mean, I am doing, I'm doing 25 hours a week of study on that.
Wow.
Plus everything else. So, I mean, it's all very time consuming. I'm having to turn work down now. I just can't keep up the same amount of work as as normally, and it's just too much. But I love it.
You'll
But
come
I'm
out on the
listening to
other side an
audiobooks.
entirely different person. It'll be
But I'm
so
listening
worth
to
it.
audiobooks because I haven't got the time to read The Remains of the Day, The End of the Affair, and what's the other one? I can't remember. Before the end of next week. I just haven't got time to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's 2 full-length books a week, every week for 12 weeks, on top of everything else. So I am listening to audiobooks. But that's why I'm listening to audiobooks, and I am getting to the end of those. But for pleasure, I tend to read rather than listen, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I listen at night because ever since my eyes went bad, I never went back to finding time to.
I've had a cataract operation, so I
How
can
did it
see
help?
now.
Did it help?
It was amazing.
Yeah.
15 minutes of extraordinary oddity with your eyeball pinned open and somebody jet washing your eyeball and then zapping it with ultrasound or whatever to dissolve, and then everything goes black and you go, oh God, I can't see a bloody thing, what's going on? And then you feel a little bit of pressure on the outside edge of your eye, and then suddenly there's bright lights and you can see a very blurry face in front of you, and they stick a patch over your eye and send you home, and your pupils, you look like you've been on ketamine because your pupils like this
Dilated.
Giant dilated thing. But the next morning I woke up and I opened my eyes and I went, my God, I can see the bottom of the garden as I stood cleaning my teeth. And it was a bit blurry at that point. But and color, the most amazing thing is color. Looking through my left eye, which has still got a cataract, which they may or may not do. Everything is yellow.
I had cataracts. I want someone to do that.
It's like looking through a yellow gauze. And suddenly everything is bright and shining and amazing. And I have to wear sunglasses all the time because everything's so bright. I still need reading glasses, and I need, I can see the text without my specs, which is amazing. With that eye.
I've got a picture of Helen rocking up with her MA with the big old sunglasses on. That's very cool.
And I don't do sunglasses by half. I've got, really big sunglasses.
Yeah, that's the only way to do sunglasses.
So there is a lot of work, and I am listening to audiobooks because of that, because I have to, because I just haven't got time to read.
Okay, I've got 2 more questions I want to make sure we get to. Jim wants to know, who are your favorite narrators?
The guy who did the Just William stories, whose name I forgot, I've got to look him up. Isn't that ridiculous?
It's okay. I'm so bad with names, like literally.
Martin Jarvis.
Who?
Martin Jarvis. He did Just William. His Just Williams are wonderful. He gives, and it's just, we were talking about attitude and personality.
Yeah.
He's the story. Do you know the Just William stories?
No.
So yeah, it's about a little boy who's called William, and he's 9.5 or something, and he's a fairly naughty little boy, and he causes havoc basically. But he's very funny. It's they're a very funny series, and Martin Jarvis gives William a deeper voice than his father, Mr. Brown. And you think, when you first hear it, you think, but he's only 9. But he's got the attitude of a little boy, and he's just he's a little boy because he's right down here trying to be terribly, terribly grown up, and he's really, really a little boy. And Mr. Brown just speaks perfectly normally, and it's magical. Because it's about he's found the attitude and the personality of that child and not even thought about the voice. I'm sure it was never a conscious decision, but he's 9 or 10 or whatever age he is. It's absolutely brilliant. So Martin Jarvis, I like Juliet Stevenson reading some stuff, although she's got a bit wishy-washy lately.
She did the Lollipop Shoes. I love that audiobook. But Joanna somebody wrote it.
Joanna Harris. Yeah. I love the book. I haven't listened to the audiobook.
Oh, she does. I think it's Juliet Stevenson does it. And it's so beautiful.
I do like her stuff. I do like her stuff. And I like Emma Thompson as well.
Oh, I've not heard anything she's done.
I like Emma Thompson. I can't remember what the last thing that I listened to of hers reading I was. Can't remember what it was now. She's done, she obviously did the Nanny McPhee stuff, which was very good. She does a lot of children's stuff, and I listen with my granddaughter her too. She's done all Peter Rabbit stuff. And she hasn't done vast amounts of audio, but what I've heard of her, I really like. Oh God, I'm terrible at names.
I know I'm really bad too.
Campbell, Cassandra Campbell. Is it Cassandra Campbell? It is Cassandra Campbell, I think. I'm listening to Colin Firth at the moment.
They're all most of them are celebrities. So, but some celebrities. Well,
it's just no. The only reason is because I'm listening to Graham Greene's End of the Affair, which is read by Colin Firth. So it's a question of having to.
Yeah, really? Because they're the book shoot. Okay, don't want to miss this. We got a quirky question to end the call with. And this is from Barbara, a resident quirky question person. What's the strangest or funniest holiday gift you've ever received?
Holiday gift?
Yeah.
Do you mean like a Christmas present? Okay. Yeah. Okay. The strangest gift I've ever received, ever in my entire life, was a tenor saxophone.
A saxophone?
A saxophone, yes.
Who gave you that? For what? For
my husband gave it me, a tenor saxophone, for my 40th birthday.
That's quite romantic. Did you want a saxophone?
And said, play it. No, not remotely. I said, well, I didn't know I wanted one till I got one. And he said, learn to play it. So I did.
Oh, I love that's the next question. Did you learn to play it?
Yeah, I did.
Maybe he just really wanted to hear a saxophone around the house.
Oh no, he banned me. I had to go to the bottom of the garden because while I was learning, I made such awful noises. I mean, it was really difficult. And I'm really sad because shortly, well, about I used to play Bach on it. So I mean, I got quite good at it. But probably about 10 years after I got it, I had to have a tooth crowned. And my embouchure disappeared, and it completely disappeared because you're playing like that. You blow down, it's a reed instrument. Yeah. You have to do that. And once I'd had that tooth crowned, I couldn't do it anymore. I
bet that was good for your voice, though. I bet that was good exercise.
It's very good for my breath control.
Jim had a good point. Jim said, did he perhaps want a tenor saxophone?
No, he was a bass guitarist.
Oh, okay.
And a clarinetist. So I think what he hoped is that I would learn to play jazz and we'd be able to jam together. But I never actually mastered jazz.
So romantic.
It was quite romantic, yes. It was quite
Wow. I got a vacuum once, so that's very romantic.
He did also give me an ironing board one year, but then it was very much a joke. It was very much a joke.
Yeah, and the thing is, once he's done the tenor saxophone, he's pretty much set for years. He doesn't have to. All they have to do is one nice thing.
He's got good brownie points for that. He's got very good brownie points for that. Bless him.
Barbara says she got an unwrapped hammer once, not even tied in a bow. I read really too many thrillers. What you could do with that hammer.
Good. That's really good.
Oh, Helen, this has been lovely.
Well, I'm sorry. I feel I've taken. I would like to have had more of a conversation with people. I feel I've kind of talked too much, and I do apologize.
You didn't. We wanted to hear people. If we'd had questions, believe me, this lot is not shy.
There's me going. You've all read the article. I want to know what you all thought of it. I know what Daniela thought of it.
I know, but everyone kind of I think unwrapped. You guys, does anyone have, and come up on stage does anyone have any thoughts about that article that they'd like to bring up? I think the conversation. I loved that conversation on the group. I didn't mean for it to end up that way, but I learned a lot just from people's individual comments.
I must look at the chat because I haven't seen it. Can I look?
Yeah, of course you can look.
Can I peek?
I'm not dumb. She's been watching the whole time. She's
I haven't.
discreetly been keeping an eye on. Yeah, you guys, but they're not shy. They would say, "What is your favorite genre?" We've got everything
What do you do
covered.
in a case of bad writing? Read it as it is. Yes, you have no option. I'm afraid you do have to just read what it's there. I did have one where I really questioned it. It was, and the author had written, was it? She lengthened her legs to catch up with him. And what she meant was she'd lengthened her stride to keep up with him. And I questioned it and said, sounds a little bit strange. No, I want it like it is. So I kind of went, she lengthened her legs to keep up with him.
Yeah, I've done that. I've done that too, kind of like when thrown the sentence away a little bit. So yeah, and I don't know, the whole article thing, I can't remember what I was worried about now. It all
No,
makes
well, I think
perfect sense.
this is the trouble with articles like this. And I mean, there have been loads of articles. You know, there have been articles ad nauseum that go, oh, audiobooks are wonderful. They're the best thing for the publishing industry since sliced bread. And then they name 6 audiobooks by incredibly famous people and ignore the 700 audiobooks that have been recorded by jobbing narrators, as I
Yeah.
like to call them. And that's equally irritating. But
But
I
that's what
think,
social media is. It's set up to do that. I mean, the
yeah,
title of
social
that
media,
article
and
was
we're,
set up to
we're
get a
also
visceral.
so used to doing instant responses. You know, it's the knee-jerk reaction to the
Yeah.
tweet that we've all got so used to doing. And reading something critically, journalists are not infallible and they're not writing fact. This isn't a factual article. It's not saying X, Y, and Z happened in Florida on Sunday afternoon, or X, Y, and Z is happening in the Ukraine at the moment, or anything else. It is saying, this is my opinion about this. So you have to unravel it. You can't, it isn't fact. She's not writing fact.
But what I realized, and what really something that's really come home to me from this article, from my reaction to this article, because I've always known this, but now I really understand it. An article, and whether or not they're all designed to trigger you one way or another, and it is always someone's opinion, and whether or not it triggers you tells you something about you and your place right now. So even the ones about the Ukraine and everything, it hits our fear somehow. So that article hit the little bit in me that was in theater, that was afraid of that critic that's going to say maybe I overact, or the things with the war hit the fear in you that
Yes.
you could get, and especially after I think we've had a fearful few years because we've been inundated with all of that. So I think we're all on like a, we're holding on, and that's why I'm really glad that I posted it and that I looked into it rather than just putting it as another thing in the back of my
Yeah.
head
Yeah.
that stays,
But one of the other things is that I don't know, I mean, very rarely I mean, even if you work with a director down the
Yeah.
line or in a studio, you're not being directed often.
Yeah.
Hardly ever are you being
Yeah.
directed. What you're working with is somebody who is doing a live proofing of that book. I mean, you may discuss stuff with them first. You may go through character choices and what the overall tone of a book is before you start recording.
But it's a nice guy that's proofing you. I never understood why people are like, a director to me is like in theater, you're getting
yeah,
directed.
and
But
you
they're saying they're
never
being directed, and they're just somebody checking to make sure that you don't
you
like
never get. I mean,
mess up the
you
sentence.
occasionally. I have had it once. Where I was working with a director from Penguin Random House, US, and it was a very, very short book. It was a children's book, and I thought I had been cast. Well, I'm sure I had been cast because I would read it like somebody's granny. And this director said to me, that was interesting. I don't see it like that at all. I see it like this. And I went, oh my God, I never thought of that. I never ever thought of that. That's really interesting. Can we try it that way? So we actually delivered to the publisher 2 recordings, 2 completely different recordings.
I love that. And I love working with directors, to be honest.
And that has only happened once. Normally what you get is, you're going a bit fast on that bit. Can we just slow that bit down? Or that didn't sound like quite the voice you used before. That sounded too old for her. Or wasn't she Irish? Or whatever it happens to be. Yeah. So, that's what you get. And that isn't directing, really. But that's where preparation comes in. Because if you think of the rehearsal process in a theatre, of how you unpick and unravel a play and put it back together again, that is what we as narrators have to do in our preparation.
Yeah.
If your preparation is meaningful, it's got nothing to do with underlining or highlighting or, color coding your characters or whatever. That is not preparation.
Yeah. No, I agree. Couldn't agree more.
I read, even if I've made notes on a text, I take them all off before I start to narrate. So I narrate on an absolutely virgin piece of text, exactly as it's come from the publishers, with not a single note on it. Not one. I probably have a post-it note pinned on the wall saying, Gladys is Welsh, or whatever it happens to say. But there's nothing on the script, because if I'm thinking, as you read ahead, if I'm seeing a note that says, an orange underline or whatever, that is going to take me out of the moment that I'm in and take me into the next moment.
I'll be in a puddle of insecurity by the end of the book, sure that I just need to quit and pack my bags. I cannot.
What if you don't have markups on your text?
I can't mark up like that and sit and look at a markup while I'm reading.
No, me.
I have to do all the preparation I possibly can before and that's the thing with accents. When people start listening to every word and how they do this I can't think about that once I'm in the booth.
Yeah.
I have to know everything I can know before. If I don't know it before, I'm not getting it. Because if I start doing that, I go down a tunnel of obsessive perfectionism.
Yeah.
So
I think that's right.
There's a point you gotta let go. Okay, I better let you go.
It's a dream of mine to be directed to get started on the right path.
Oh, I missed that. I told you she was checking the chat.
Well, you just told me I could.
I'm just joking. I'm joking. I love that. You're not. I had a guest that was like somebody's cat went across the room. She was like, oh, Kitty, and that's when I was like, okay, don't watch the chat, guys. But so it's a dream. So is that Barbara? Do you mean to be hired for a book where they have an in-house director? Because you know that you can also hire one. If you ever get a book that you just really, really love, you can hire someone that'll work with you.
I do that. People can hire me to direct. And I can either direct the entire book or the first few chapters or a bit in the middle or whatever.
Helen did that for me for an audition and I booked the job. Oh, did I ever tell you that?
No, you never told me you booked the job.
I booked the job.
Commission.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention that part.
Oh, good. I'm glad you got it. Which one was it?
I can't remember, but I remember I booked the job. I literally can't remember what the book was. Good.
But no. I mean, it's a dream of yours to get directed. If you have a director working with you from a publishing house or a production house, you'll be disappointed because they won't direct you. Yeah. What they will do is go, you read that wrong. Do you want to go back on that bit?
And that's what you were just saying too. Yeah, that's exactly what you just said. But even to be able to get I'm going to use the word direction, to get started. Like I might be on the wrong path.
Okay.
Right?
So you mean someone to work on the first chapter with you?
Yeah. Exactly. That would be lovely.
Most coaches will do that with you.
Hire Helen.
Yeah, I mean, I will.
Yeah.
If anybody wants me to do that with them, what I want is a synopsis of the book. I haven't got time to read the whole book, so I want the synopsis of the book. I want all your notes about all the characters. I want all your research, and I want the text of the section you want to work on. And I will very happily do that with anybody.
And very well, like very well. Yeah,
because
I can't say enough.
It's the two things. It's unpeeling the onion, reading between the lines, seeing what isn't written that will make the read more dynamic, more interesting, more apparently truthful, more real, more connected somehow. Because when you read for pleasure, when you read for yourself, you can kind of go back. You can go, what did that just say? Oh, crikey. I never thought of that. Oh, wow. Okay. So you do that. Now, when you're narrating, unless the listener is also reading, which sometimes happens, but very rarely, you have to not exactly signpost, but you have to know what all of those moments are, where something has happened that isn't being said. Otherwise, you will just read them without any acknowledgement of that. And the reader will then get to the end of the book and went, I didn't understand that book at all. I must have missed something in the middle somewhere. I just didn't get it. And when people say, I didn't get that book at all, if it's a well-written book, it's usually because there's not been enough disclosure within the read to give the layers that the author has intended. And you only find those layers if you prepare meaningfully.
Yeah, you got to know the whole world of the book. Not enough analysis.
Yeah, absolutely not enough analysis. But it's not just it's an analysis. It's an emotional analysis. It's an analysis of every single character regarding their attitude, their personality, where they are in terms of authority or subjugation against the other characters, what their context in the book is, what their role in the book is, what their aim in the book is. And that applies to a serving maid just the same way as it applies to a leading character. So you know the backstory, and if it's not written, you invent it. You make it up, because it's your job to create a fully rounded 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional, 6-dimensional, however many dimensions you want, person or alien or whatever it happens to be. You have to create that person in a way so that when you get the crowd scene of 6 18-year-olds or 6 40-year-olds or 6 members of the same golf club who all come from the same town, who all went to the same school, who all belong to the same club, who all sound on face value exactly the same and have only 10 lines each about golf, you've got to find the attitude of those people and the personality of those people. Otherwise, they will all sound exactly the same. And the listener will go, who said that? If the attributions aren't there, if it doesn't go said Bob or said Joe or said Fred. But if it does say said Bob, said Joe, said Fred, and your voice or your attitude or your performance is identical, then the reader will go, why don't I know who these people are?
Yeah, I saw a thing just called Roar, and it's a series of short shows. And this woman starts a relationship with a duck, and it turns into a bad relationship. He turns into like an abusive, narcissistic duck that's a jerk.
A duck, as in a quack.
And that right there is the attitude of the person playing the duck. Of course, you're only hearing their voice because it's a duck. The attitude is you forget it's a duck by the end of this. It's only a half-hour thing. You forget him as a duck. You're like, the guy's a jerk. Get rid of him. And he's a duck. And you completely forget because the part is so well-rounded. And he is that guy. I mean, attitude.
This is why, Jemima Puddle Duck and all those books are so brilliant, because the characters in them are people. Somebody now. Sean is saying, I'm narrating a book that switches between 2 characters. Near the end of the book, one of the characters doesn't exist. No, but you don't know at the beginning of the book that that character doesn't exist, and neither must the listener. So you have to play it as exactly honestly as if they do all the way through to the end. But yeah, you can't do that on a cold read. Well, you can never do an audit. I don't think you can ever. Well, you can, but you will never give you'll never give of your best if you're doing a cold read. You can, and I've done it because I've had to occasionally.
That is so the kind of book I like. But
I've never done it in a fiction book. I've only ever done it in a non-fiction book. Well, no, I lie. I have done it in a fiction book, but it was number 7 of a series, and I knew exactly who everybody was, and because it was the author I knew what was going to happen as well, so it was all right.
So it was kind of not a cold read. You'd already been.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I can see Siobhan's here.
Yes, everyone's come to join. Colin made it. Everyone's come to join. We had a good crowd tonight. Siobhan says hi. You guys, this has been such a lovely call. Helen, especially having forgotten about the MA, I'm so honored that you took the time to join us tonight because
I'm on a break. We don't start the next term till Monday, so
okay,
I'm actually
good.
on a break.
Okay.
I'm enjoying not doing it. Just looking at that is my reading list for next term, all of those.
Oh wow. I love it though. I love the idea of the challenge. It
is fabulous.
Doing these things.
I'm enjoying it so much.
Because then you'll come back narrating and it's like you'll be a different person.
What it has done is it's taught me to read in a different way, which is interesting.
How?
Because I've always been a very kind of instinctive sort of person, and I will look at a book and go, I like this book, or I don't like this book, and it's that, when I'm reading for pleasure. And it's taught me to be much more analytical about what styles of writing I enjoy, what styles of writing I dislike, what makes for me a good book, and what engages me in a book, and what I find irritating in a book, and also how important, if a book is well written, the use of language is, and how the use of language and certain sentence structures can inform you about a character if a book's really well written.
I love that.
There's I'm in the middle of The End of the Affair by Graham Greene, and it is the most wonderful book I think I've ever read, ever. But I say that about an awful lot of books. My favourite book is always the book I'm now reading. But this one is stunning because it switches. It is literally about the end of an affair, and it's the first part of the book is written from his perspective, and the second part of the book is written from her perspective, and it's absolutely fascinating because it's still the same author, it's still the same book, but his use of language changes totally between him and her. And I've never thought about how differently men and women use words before, and how their sentence structure changes, and how a man can get himself inside a woman's head as well as he does in that book. I do not know. It's quite extraordinary. It's really brilliant.
Oh, I think I'm going to listen to that one because I really think that kind of thing informs every book we do. It informs our acting.
Yeah,
I mean, that knowledge and that skill.
And I mean, if ever you've done Shakespeare, you know that the words that Shakespeare uses are the right words. They're just the right words for whatever the moment is. Yeah. Almost always. He occasionally gets it wrong, I think, but almost always he gets it right. And, if to be or not to be started with to live or not to live, it wouldn't have anything like the same impact as to be or not to be, because being is not the same as living, if you see what I mean. Yeah. So it's the use of the words, and it's made me analyze the use of words much, much more, and how words change. It's just fascinating. It's just really, really interesting. Really interesting. I'm loving every minute of it. Bloody terrifying.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrifying. Just because I'm, I'm probably the oldest person doing it by a long chalk, and it's there are people who have I've just done a BA, so I thought I'd do an MA, and I'm going, oh God, I went to college 60, near enough. The last time I did an exam was 67 years ago.
But that's one or the other. I mean,
no, it wasn't 67. Sorry, no.
But for everything you take away with age or space and time, you add with experience and life skills and different things.
But I'm suddenly having to go, I'm suddenly having to look up what is syntax and things like that, because
that's good though. That's good. That's what we should all be doing every single day, because that's what keeps you young. That's what keeps you young.
A bit late in my case, love.
No, it's never. No, it's never. Absolutely disagree. And there's that article I posted it 1,000,000 times, that study they did in New York, where they took, I think the men were like 80 something, and they put them in a place for 2 weeks. I'll never forget this. It changed my life. I don't understand why everyone else isn't shocked and amazed by it. And they put them in an environment that was completely, I think 10, 20 years past from their past. So the newspapers they were reading, it was a controlled environment. It's too expensive to run it too many times. But before they went into the study, they took all their statistics, their physical, their mental, everything. They go into this environment for a certain amount of time, couple of months or something. And when they came out of it, they were physically different human beings. All their statistics physically were young. I'll send you the article link. I posted it recently because somebody reminded me of it. They had physically become younger. All their stats, all their readings, and mentally. And then when they were back out in their normal environment and people were telling them, and they were being reminded of what they were supposed to be at this age, all those health factors went back downhill. And when I read that article, it changed me. It was like a few years ago. I literally forgot my age. It's not even a thing with me, ever. I couldn't probably tell you unless I have to fill out a form and be reminded. It's irrelevant. So the trick is what you're doing, having to learn the terminology, because that's the only difference when you get older. You stop having to learn.
And because things have changed since I was at school. I mean, I said 67 was my last exam. It wasn't actually. It was 1964 was the last exam I ever did. And they asked me to produce the certificates, and I went, "You've got to be joking! I've moved house 7 times. No, I haven't got the certificates I got in 1964. How could I possibly have
the thought process? The trick is when you're young and somebody shows you something new, you think, oh, wow, I've learned something new here. This is. But when you're older and you see something new, you think, oh, God, more evidence that I'm past it and I'm never going to catch up with all this.
Yeah. So that's quite true, actually.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Well, we'll see when the marks come out on Monday for the first.
It's amazing. I think it's brilliant.
What grade I got as to how successful I've been on it.
I'm going to send you the link to that article.
Read it.
Seriously, it changed my life. Okay.
I mean, it is age is only a matter of but then you look in the mirror and I go, my God, it's my mother, and that's the horrible bit.
Yeah, but you see, I don't anymore.
You're lucky you don't look like your mother. I do.
But you see, I had a few hard years and I'd gotten into all that, but it's just not a thing. It's literally not a thing. Nobody knows unless you decide to tell them or you believe what you're supposed to believe about it. It's literally not a fact.
It's quite true. It is true, actually.
And our bodies are different.
That's right. But it's also, the trouble is, I think, when you start looking older, and there's nothing you can do about that short of plastic surgery and bottles of hair dye. If you go grey, you lose your hair, your eyesight starts going, your teeth start falling out, whatever, because it happens to all of us. It does happen. You can't stop those things. But what happens, Daniela, is that you can feel whatever you feel, and you can feel as energized and as dynamic and as youthful, but you start being ignored. You become invisible, especially as a woman. I stood in a shop at a cosmetics counter like this going, and they've gone straight past me because somebody of my age isn't supposed to buy lipstick or whatever it happens to be, and you do become invisible.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that doesn't exist. I'm not going to say that doesn't exist.
Gets further away.
I do believe though that with enough, I think you can fight it, and I think you can fight it with an energy.
Oh, you can.
Because if in your mind you're thinking that you're being seen as older, you start to feel older.
Yeah,
but if you're,
absolutely, of course,
if you walk in that room like, you're going to pay attention to me, honey. Like if you were a celebrity used to tons of attention, you walked in there holding that thing up to the counter of the person, they'd pay attention. Because if you did what you do in an audiobook and you step on stage, you know you're going to command the room.
Yes, but it's not. I mean, yes, I dispute that slightly. I think that even with the most dynamic, most attitude you've got. I mean, I've got attitude. I walk in a shop and I've got attitude, but I remember many years ago, my mother went to buy me a cashmere jumper for my birthday, and she'd had a hard day at work, and she walked into a smart shop and said, "I'd like a black polo neck cashmere sweater, please." And the assistant looked at her and said, "Are you sure you mean cashmere, madam? It's very expensive." And my mother felt her hurt was not that the woman thought she might not be able to afford it, but what she really pissed her off was the fact that the woman thought she didn't know what cashmere was. And that's what really made her angry, because that immediately made, it was a superiority thing, nothing to do with what my mother looked like. It was to do with the fact that she didn't think she knew the quality of something like that. So she went into another shop and bought one. She never went in that shop again. But that's how you, no matter what attitude you've got, particularly in the UK. And I have to say, one of the joys, I've just been to Disney World for a fortnight, and I went on every ride.
Oh,
and
I love
ate
that.
Chips till they were coming out of my ears. Sorry, fries till they were coming out of my ears. And I watched fireworks, and I got drowned in thunderstorms, and I had the most amazing fortnight. And seeing my granddaughter's face when Mickey Mouse gave her a hug was worth every single solitary penny that it cost. However, one of the major things that it really impressed me, I mean, there were things that I loathed about it, because it was all kind of just so over the top and loud and noisy and packed with people. And having not seen people for 2 years, it felt really scary being amid crowds. But two things really impressed me. One was the cleanliness. Everywhere was absolutely spotless. No litter, no mess. The politeness of the children was gobsmacking. I couldn't believe how polite American children are. But the customer service was amazing. Absolutely phenomenal. And there's a thing that happens in the States that very rarely happens here, that when somebody says, we're pleased to see you, or thank you, or have a nice day, or you're welcome, you get the feeling that they mean it. Customer service was amazing everywhere.
I'm so happy to hear that still exists.
I mean, phenomenal in everywhere, from Walmart to McDonald's to all the Disney. I mean, especially at the Disney resorts. And one wonderful thing there was, we were greeted in one of the restaurants. They have greeters who then hand you over to the maitre d' to take you to your table in the posh restaurants. And this little old lady came up and greeted us. She got her badge on. She was called Joy. And the maitre d' came out and he said, "How did Joy do?" And we went, "Well, she was lovely. It's her first day at work. She's our latest recruit." And she was 70 that day. And they just hired her. And it was just wonderful to go. We all gave her hugs. We all left her huge tips and thought, my God, it's only 10 o'clock in the morning. How are her feet going to be by the time it gets to tonight? But she was brilliant. It was wonderful. And literally, the customer service was amazing. Absolutely amazing.
I love that. I love that. Well, I'm still sticking to my thing, though. I think we all have a fire within us. And if we don't
we
listen
do.
to the rubbish, you're turning younger. The fact that you're doing this MA, you're turning younger every minute. And I'm going to completely, if I have to delude myself that I look younger and more gorgeous every time I look in the mirror, either people will buy into that energy, or I'll be completely deluded and I won't know the difference.
It's one of the drawbacks of having had a cataract operation, I have to say, is that I can now see myself clearly in the mirror, whereas before I was going, oh, I don't look too bad, really, do I?
Wear the sunglasses.
Every wrinkle. So it's not all great, but still, no, it's good. And it's been lovely to talk to everybody.
I've kept you guys. So I love you all. Helen, this call has been magical.
This call has been long.
No, but it's been worth every minute. And thank you guys for joining. This has just been lovely. This call has just been so lovely, I can't say.
Thank you all of you.
You're all fabulous.
Very nice.
Bye, Helen. Thank you.
Everybody. And
thanks,
good luck.
Everyone.
Good luck with whatever you're doing, whatever. And don't ever give up on the dream, because it's, you can do it. Yes. Whatever your dream is, you can do it.
And I'm going to put that link on that on the post so you can all be youngified.
Yes. And all and please, can you edit out, I never listen to audiobooks.
Oh, yes, I will edit that part out. I know, I saw Helen, she's like, only here, and I'm like, and YouTube, and I was like, oh, yes, wow.
No, I'm fairly open about it. I'm fairly open about it. I mean, I do listen to audiobooks. Of course I listen to audiobooks.
It's okay. I edit my double chin out anyway, so
if there's a book I want to read, I would rather read it than listen to it, generally. That's all, really. Yeah. But of course I listen to audiobooks. I don't always listen them to the end. That's all.
On that note.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Lovely to meet you all. Bye-bye. Bye.